Hello, this is Dale. We're just a blip on the international politics radar, but it's our blip. Hello, Mike. Blip to you.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means, but okay.
Read
Yes,
between the lines.
we are we're a very small blip. I think when the little arm came around, you know. Yeah,
Well, as we've said before on this show, local politics is the least interesting thing to most internet viewers worldwide. Well, I don't know, except for maybe some places like China or maybe even Libya. I don't know, but that's what we do, and we do that very unpopular thing better than anybody.
Oh, all right. Yeah, as measured by the National Council of Local Political Coverage Institute.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
Well, we have some news for you tonight that nobody else has. But first, let me just explain a little bit about why there is a royal flush over my shoulder. This is not about gambling, as it was with last night in the city council, Grants Pass City Council, and their choice to gamble away their credibility. No, this is about the fact that in Josephine County, we need a royal flush. I couldn't show that, so I showed this instead.
Well, you could have showed that.
No, not on this show. That's just unsanitary.
Yes.
So we have a new front page, of course, because that was as of yesterday, and we've got Keith Eck up here, and we've got the fire guys, and Grizzly Adams, and Tootie McNeil, or whatever her name is, that wants them to change the marijuana laws, and Darren Fowler talking about. I don't
Tootie McNeil?
I don't know her name. Anyway, and also here's Darren Fowler that's talking about what a wonderful lawyer Mark Bartholomew is and how it's great that he's deceiving the people.
Well,
it's amazing.
I thought that was interesting that, and which is odd because he was in the courtroom. He witnessed all this live. And, I mean, if you were there, I thought it was odd that the judge came up with, permanent means never ending. And so, of course, this is not a permanent sales tax.
Yes, right.
Yes. And then to be followed up by Mr. Fowler's analysis that was really a prudent thing that they did there. Yes, it was quite astute. And I just thought, wow, that's amazing, because now, I mean, Dale has pointed out how they use permanent like incessantly throughout when they're talking about almost everything.
And in the document itself, in the text of the document.
Yes. And then there's a ton of other laws in which they implant permanent. Are we to assume that they mean to the end of time that these laws will be, applied to our lineage for the next couple of millennia or something, or what? Until the world ends, until Judgment Day happens? Now, wait a minute. That's not permanent either, because time will still go on after Judgment Day, won't it? It's just silly.
I just think that this judge is going to have to take it up with God.
Yes, he is.
God may actually have something to say to both of these guys. So
yes, about permanence.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so tonight's news. We're going to start off with a little clip where Bill Hunker, you remember him, he came on this show and he was showing us charts and graphs, and he was right about these things, because we said a couple of things like about the state OSP and everything, and the sheriff said, "Oh, that's not right. It's just 5 other things." Well, it turned out Bill was right. So anyway, so Bill has a question for Keith Eck and Simon Hare at this meeting, the Wednesday weekly business session. He'd just like to know something about the new fire standards. Why don't you play that video, Mike?
Good morning. Bill Hunker, Merlin, Oregon. Just have one question I'm really I've been trying to find an answer to, and that is regarding the fire ordinance. I read it a couple of weeks ago, and I understand there's a number 2 in the works, maybe even a number 3. My question is, who wrote this? the name of the person who wrote it. What often will happen is, well, a committee wrote it. And I know from being on committees don't write anything. All they do is point to somebody and say, will you write this for our committee? But somebody actually put pen to paper or computer and wrote this. And no one seems to know that. And if we have something that's 12 pages long and nobody knows who wrote it, is it a hoax? Do we have any reason to believe you're not being pranked if we don't have any idea who wrote this thing? And if you do have an idea who wrote it, let's find out so we can ascertain exactly how the person's related, where this came from. Thanks.
Thank you.
Trying to find out who we test to come up with this isn't necessarily constructive in my mind. Find out what's wrong with it. That's what I'm more interested in, because that's what I will focus on fixing. So that's probably more productive in my mind.
Did the masters of the Illuminati contact them and say, listen, you must protect the people of the inner sanctum. Do not allow them to be named in a public forum.
Now, it's not news that Simon has this kind of royal flush attitude, okay, because people would like to know. And this Keith X, well, it doesn't make any difference. Well, it does make a difference. It makes a lot of difference. All kinds of people are asking, who came up with this? And what's their relationship to rural metro? Okay. And why would they write this kind of thing? And so it is a legitimate question. And he was asking, he even explained it, because we'd like to find out what their relationship to this is. But the other really interesting thing about this is the first time there's been the slightest slip by anybody on the board about the following. They said up to this point that this was written by an outside group. Remember that? This was written by an outside group, the Rogue Valley
Chiefs Association or
Fire Chiefs Association, right?
Oh, okay.
But what did Simon just say? He just said, basically, good luck on finding out who wrote this, who we tasked to do this.
Yes.
We tasked.
Yeah.
So you tasked somebody to do this? This is not what you've been saying.
What have they been saying?
They've been saying that, like I was just saying a second ago, what have I been saying? They've been saying that it was an outside group that came to them with this. And this outside group, the Rogue Valley Fire Chiefs Association, has this burning need, to improve the fire standards, because everyone's life is at, think of the children, Mike. Everyone's life is in danger, and so they're going to need to tighten up on all these rules and regulations. They didn't say anything, in fact, the opposite of the idea that they tasked somebody. So we have...
Do you have them somewhere on video saying that the Chiefs Association came to them with this thing?
Yeah, it was part of one of the little backroom meetings. Yes.
Well, okay. That's very interesting.
We placed the whole thing, the entire clip, on YouTube so that everybody can see it without our comments. So here's the thing. We have the answer. So, gee, I hope Bill's watching this tonight. We have his answer for him. There are 3 different versions of the fire standards. I'm going to call it, I've been calling it versions draft 0, which happened several years ago. And then there's draft 1, which is the one where you've seen the videotape. And what you don't see is the idea that County Fire and Rescue from Merlin is sitting in the audience. They weren't inviting them up to talk. And then there's version 2. Version 2 was the one you recall Cheryl Walker was saying to Simon Hare, well, version 2 was sent out to one company. One company? Shouldn't you send them out to all companies? Well, I didn't do it, she says. Well, Keith X is not in the room, and she refers to the fact that Keith's not here, but it's sent out by one company. Well, it seems to indicate, we have to guess sometimes. Why do we have to guess in the most transparent government in the entire world, according to Simon Hare? Anyway, it probably was Keith X to decide to share it just with one company. Probably so. At least she said she didn't. So, version 0 was written several years ago by Steve Rich. Almost, like 90% sure it was Steve Rich, according to Wally Hicks, the current legal counsel. that makes sense that the county attorney would become involved. Version 1, the one where they were sitting there talking, and Keith Hicks says, why does it say here that one of the minimum standards is you have to have 24-hour coverage on every one of, does everyone have 24-hour coverage on every one of the stations? No, nobody does. Then how is that one of the minimum standards? Okay, it's not even the people who wrote it.
Right, yes.
Now that one, we're pretty dang sure, that's tech talk for like 80% or something, that it was Lang Johnson, no jokes about his name, Lang Johnson, who used to be with Rural Metro.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, used to be with the other competing company with County Fire and Rescue.
Now, see, this goes back to the root of why does a guy like Bill Hunker get up and ask, who wrote this? What relevance does that have, you say? And it does speak to motivation. And, this guy used to be with Rural Metro. You don't know what ties he still has to Rural Metro. And, who's playing favorites with who. And listen, maybe none of that is going on. But the bottom line is both Keith and Simon basically told, the public in the auditorium there, it's none of your business.
Yes.
And I just think, number one, you shouldn't treat the people like that. And then number two, listen, I was watching that. I thought, well, that's fine that Simon says that. I don't think that that's necessarily constructive. Perfectly legitimate. But it was done in this, that wasn't all there was to that. And,
no, he went off on an endless soliloquy of how we're living in a fire-prone society these days. And do you know how many acres that we have of forest? Simon, nobody asking you about forests. Yeah. They're asking you about who wrote these rules.
Yeah, and there's, listen, and why is it that you're questioning why this guy what difference does it make if you even understand why he wants to know who wrote it? I think if he wants to know who wrote it, it's either the people's business or it's not. One of the two. So make up your mind. If it is the people's business, then shut up and give him the information that he wants, or say, sir, you know what? I don't really know who that is right now, but I will try to get that information for you.
Well, this is what I said to Wally Hicks. I said, look, Wally, the thing is that even in the city council meetings, the Grants Pass city council meetings, which is as low as their credibility is these days, they are criticizing the county commissioners in 2 meetings that I've been to about their lack of credibility and how nobody trusts them. They're criticizing the county commissioners for that. I guess it makes them feel better. So I said to Wally, and at a time when their credibility is about this high, why dance around this? Just answer it. Just tell people. What possible reason could you have for, as Keith Heck puts, forming a barricade between the people? Look, the whole idea behind asking is we're wondering if there's any kind of footsie going on here. You know what we're asking. And Simon says, well, I'm just not going to answer that, basically. Well Simon,
the barricade is...
Go ahead.
The barricade is not only to shield the county employees from criticism. The barricade is to keep you from even knowing who they are.
Yes.
So transparency, is that a plexiglass barricade that you're planning on installing there, Keith? It's silly that this whole idea is silly. So give us the information. It's our information. Just let us have it, for crying out loud. We're paying your salary. Don't get don't get sarcastic with me. Don't get nasty with me. I'm asking you who wrote it. I don't even care if you don't know why. Just tell me.
Yeah. Well, this is what happened when I went in to go see Wally Hicks. Wally Hicks maintains an open door attitude. You may recall that Cheryl Walker wanted to glass him off so that people couldn't go see him. Really, Wally didn't want to be glassed off. What? And you got to get in with the secret code or something? Shut up. Yes. Okay, so I went and saw him, And he told me right away, why wouldn't he? I mean, what's the problem? He's an elected official. Why is he going to keep this secret? He's not forming a barricade. I know sometimes the questions we ask him are kind of like, you can see it on his face, like, am I going to get in trouble for answering this? He didn't bother. He wrote version number 2. Really? And so I said to him, oh, okay, and I'm not trying to make it like it's a big conspiracy or anything, but we would like to know. And I said, why would they keep this secret? I said, by the way, remember the part where they were talking about that Keith asked the question of, well, what do you do about the 24-hour station and everything? Wally doesn't remember that question. It was a pretty important one, I thought.
Yeah.
He doesn't remember that. He just rewrote it and put in county, county, county. And by the way, the county, county asked about the county. It's all now says county all throughout it. Doesn't seem like it's written by anyone else except for the county. And it's like got, instead of draft, and that says county or something. It's just county all the time. Okay, well, whatever. And there may be another draft of it, but we're going to let Keith Heck say whatever he has to say about this, and we're going to play you another clip on another day and also post it with Keith Heck saying basically that, hey, everybody's involved. We're going to see, and that's what we're going to do here, and the rest of the show is we're going to play back excerpts from the county commissioners on KJO this morning. Most of the time, honestly, it's blather. Honestly, it just is, like this show. But today it was very interesting, and I said to Mike, we definitely want to record this one because I think that they're going to come up with every reason in the world to run away from responsibility. I found out something I'm going to confess about myself today. For this evening's show. Yes, right.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Okay. So I had said at an earlier show that one thing they shouldn't try to run away from is this Food and Friends program, whether you like the program or not. The Food and Friends used to be called Meals on Wheels, that the commissioners can't say, well, we have nothing to do with this. That's the 4-H guys. You are the 4-H guys. I said, you're half of the 4-H board, so you can't pretend you had absolutely nothing. Well, it's not us. It's people wearing other hats. It's you wearing another hat. We're not surprised, okay? Well, I was wrong about that because I said they were half of that board. But it's okay to be wrong this time, because the reason I was wrong is because I've gone to the meetings of the 4-H Extension Service District. It's complex. To their meetings of their budget committee, and there's 6 people on their budget committee. What do I know? And not much. And there were 6 people, with the commissioners forming half of it. I thought this was the 4-H board. It's not. That's their budget committee for 4-H. Okay, who's on the 4-H board? 3 people, the 3 commissioners. Now, wait, that's worse. Before I was saying, well, of course they're responsible. They're half of it. They're not half of it. They're 100% of the 4-H board. Now you're going to tell us you have nothing to do with this decision about Food and Friends? You're 100% of the board.
Yeah.
Really? Okay, so let's start playing. We'll play as much of this KJO thing as we can, and we'll jump in every once in a while and laugh at them. Well, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Situation that's been in the papers that is being contested.
Yes,
the GMO ordinance, and
let me scratch off my first question.
And that came about because there's a lawsuit that has been filed by a couple out of Illinois Valley that's in the process of going through that legal process. They have been very gracious in the way that they've conducted the thing. It's not been inflammatory. It's just been they want to contest this. Okay, good. The other side, the pro-GMO folks, they now have an intervener who has stepped in, and they are going to actually advocate for the GMO ordinance, and the other couple is appealing that and wanting to have it overturned. So that's in the process of the legal process, and about as far as we can go on that one.
Okay, he obviously has it backwards. That's not the first time he's gotten it backwards. It's not the pro-GMO guys who are protesting. It's the pro-GMO guys that are protesting. I just said that wrong. But it's the lawsuit is coming from the pro-GMO side, not the anti-GMO side. He said it backwards. Okay, whatever. We all know what he's talking about. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, and there is a fair amount of interesting information in here about this GMO thing, and I'm of a little bit different opinion on this at this point, because after hearing them talk about it, it appears that they're seeking a clarification, and ultimately this clarification is going to lead to the situation being more clear. Imagine that. And and we'll probably get right back to this GMO ban that is, they should have done this, quite frankly, a long time ago. Why they waited until, 2 days before the thing was supposed to be enacted, that's just silly.
Well, I think I know why. Okay, because want to be fair. I think the reason why is they got some kind of letter from the sheriff saying we're going to start enforcing this soon. And so if you're growing GMO products, we're probably going to come by and visit you. And their version of it out in Illinois Valley is that was enough for them to go, what? And then do something about it. I agree with you. They should have a long time ago, but this was just enough to shake them up. The sheriff is actually coming because he hasn't anything else to do, as we all know.
Right. Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Don't know yet. Everybody will know as it proceeds and makes the papers and all those other kinds of things.
All right. Let me just ask a question here about that. I was under the impression, and certainly the county voted for the GMO ordinance. Right. However, I was under the impression it was only an advisory vote and illegal according to state law. Am I incorrect in that?
You got me.
That is the element of debate.
Yeah.
Jackson County had a specific carve-out in the legislation.
Yeah, and they were the only county that had that.
They're the only county that had that because they had already started an initiative petition when the legislation was being drafted and took place. So the Oregon Right to Farm and Forest Act precludes, and that legislation talking about that precludes local jurisdictions from enacting any legislative action, an election, to restrict the ability over what the state regulates on pesticides, herbicides, GMO, and a host of things. So,
all right. So, is the question then when the county or when the local GMO folks began gathering signatures? Is that the question mark about whether they would fit under the guideline?
The local GMO group, which was very closely affiliated with the one in Jackson County, was still, I believe, working on the ballot title and measure language. They had an intent to actually file, but the legislation passed before that was actually done. They went ahead and did it. And their contention is that because they were already in process with language and ballot title, that they should also have had a carve out, so to speak, as Jackson County did, because it didn't go into effect until after the election when the voters in Josephine County approved it. So, the effective date of that legislation was after the effective date of the election and the measure here in Josephine County. So that is actually the subject of the suit, as to whether that does or does not apply to Josephine County.
Do we have any idea when we'll get a decision on that? Or
no, it has not even begun the legal arguments in a court yet.
There's also the question of whether or not even Jackson County's issue is legal under the Oregon Right to Farm and Forest Act. The legislation is not 100% clear that allows the local jurisdiction to even regulate that, even given the carve out. So I think there's a couple of different issues. It's pretty messy at this point. And as Commissioner Heck said, the litigants coming out of the Illinois Valley have not sought damages. They're really just looking for clarification, which frankly, everybody I think probably wants on this issue, just once and for all. There's a host of different issues that are out there right now that really we just need kind of settled one way or the other, from land use issues to GMO and other things. So,
well, do we anticipate having an answer? I know these things can drag out on the courts forever, but do we anticipate having a decision by the next planting season?
That would be a good question to ask the court.
Okay.
I mean, there's just we have nothing to do with that. That's in the court process. Also, the county is not going to be making any decisions or movements or reactions or actions until this court situation is settled. But it could all be just a waste of time if everything is thrown out.
Boy, is that a good point. Now, what does this sound like? Sounds to me a lot like Andreas Bleck, who wanted to do the gravel operations out in Sunny Valley. And those guys said, no, hold on a second, wait till the LUBA appeal, Land Use Board of Appeals appeal, is over. But the commissioner said, no, let's go ahead and approve it. They're now saying, no, let's not approve it because we don't know if it's going to be okay. They didn't know on the LUBA appeal. We're not going to pass this. We're not going to enforce this because maybe it won't go. Well, that's what they said about Sunny Valley. So
and what an odd thing. You know, we put this thing on the ballot. How come none of this ambiguity was discussed during the campaign to pass this thing?
I think it's part of timing.
Yeah. And then not only are we going to deal with the questions that have to do with our ordinance, but now there's apparently questions about Jackson County's ordinance, which was supposed to be more ironclad than ours.
And so, this wasn't a couple of weeks ago. They gave it an entire year to work out the details.
Yes.
And then like 2 days before, I mean, they even had that celebration, as you recall, 2 days before. And we did offer a chance to the other side. They apparently didn't want to. They never got back in touch with us. Okay, well, we would have taped them and let them speak for an hour, whatever they want to do. They waited to the very last moment. I think it's a tactic. And now they've gotten a whole year to figure this out. Well, you know, let's figure it out in a couple of days. Let's delay it for another year. Meanwhile, Andreas Bleck gets the commissioners to say, yeah, well, sure, go ahead. Remember, we even had to ask, well, can he do it or can't he do it? You said he could, and then you said he couldn't. Can he or can't he? Well, you know, they're so risk adverse, they just can't answer anything straight out. Okay, well, whatever. It's going to drag on. Go ahead, Mike.
And if it is not thrown out, certainly what is in place right now will be able to continue. But we just need a legal opinion on is this all viable or not.
All right. Well,
so with Muddy Waters so far, I mean, the board has done what the ordinance required, which was send out a notice publicly, I think, and a couple of the jurisdictions, the papers locally, to just put those that are considering or those that are growing GMOs on notice that we have this ordinance. And really, that's probably, from an enforcement standpoint, we don't really have a whole lot of resources. We have one code enforcement officer, and we have a host of public health issues that we need to enforce on solid waste. That's the matrix for our hierarchy for code enforcement, health, safety, and welfare. And it might be, you know, a little bit down on the list as far as what we would be able to enforce. I mean, with the marijuana element coming in and a host of other issues, there's plenty on that one person's plate for code enforcement, ordinance-wise. So.
All right. Well, we'll deal with a couple of those other issues. Commissioner Heck, I understand. Get the feeling that we were just starting on your list when we got off on that GMO thing.
The only other issue that I have is to try to clarify somewhat of this fire and safety rules and regulations that the county is trying to work with. All of the operating fire departments and districts in Josephine County, they're all involved in trying to develop some rules and regulations by which they can all agree to establish, to have a baseline so that we can move from. And that's really the efforts of what is going on. There's not been any involvement, interest of this board, I can say, to put anybody out of business. That has nothing to do with the efforts that are underway, and that's sort of I don't know what a sad consequence is. People throw these fire bombs around, and they have nothing to do with reality, but they do take root, and they get lit for a little while. And once it gets lit, it's very, very difficult to put out. But there's not any interest in this board, certainly, of trying to put anybody out of business.
I understand that this proposed ordinance, is that what it is?
Yes.
It's just in a formulative stage. Nothing has been voted on or enacted at all yet. We're still working on
draft everywhere.
Right.
Yeah, draft.
Yeah. Draft is the word. Okay.
And to date, all of the fire companies involved in Josephine County are participating in the development of this. That is.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a little phone excerpt that you may find interesting about that statement. He said it at the weekly business session also, that all of the fire companies are involved, intimately involved in working on this. Go ahead and let's hear that, Mike.
Now, wait a minute. Is it true what Keith Eck just told everybody? We have Dan Trader from Merlin-based County Fire and Rescue right here. Dan, was your company involved at all in version 1 or version 2 of these new standards?
No.
Should it be a surprise to him that you weren't involved at all in this?
No, it would not be a surprise. I have made it clear to him on a conversation that we had approximately 2 weeks ago, and there's no question about what our position is with County Fire. And if there is, my phone's always open.
Thank you very much for your time. Unless you've got something else, Mike, we're all done.
So, now wait a minute. Keith Eck just did this again. We just played one for you last night. Again, he's saying to everybody, don't worry about it. Go back to sleep. Why, everybody's involved. Why, we're all cooperating together. What did Dan Trader from the only other company, what did he have, a private company, what did he say? No. And no, wait. Maybe Keith Eck just misspoke. Maybe he doesn't know that you're not involved. No, we talked to him, and Dan told us earlier they talked with him for over an hour about this. They weren't involved. Now, when I say version 1 and version 2, version 0, I don't know if anyone's still around, was involved in that, okay? Because that was written back many years ago. Version 1 and version 2 is what we're talking about, and those are the only ones that existed, I think, since this company has been around. They were not involved. Why? I said I would stop asking this question. Why is it that Keith Eck feels it's so important to lie to us? Mike?
Yeah, well, and it seemed as though Dan, when we were talking to him today, was basically making the point that he doesn't see need for greater amount of rules here. And so, that's sort of their position with the board, is that, we're no longer going to be participating with you in this collaborative process because we don't see the need for it.
Well, first, they weren't involved in the collaborative process before. All they were doing is saying, hey, why are you leaving us out of this? Plus, there's federal rules, there's state rules. And like I've said before on the show, what? All our homes are made out of straw, and we need to have tougher laws here than anywhere else in the state or maybe the nation? Why? Why are the commissioners getting involved in this? No, I'm more interested, though, in the fact that Keith Eck has said at a weekly business session. We're going to be putting that up as a separate video. It's part of the series called The Lifestyle of Lying, because it's flat out wrong. And why he said on KJO, well, it's one of the centers of lies, but okay, that's my personal opinion. Why is he telling you that everybody's been involved when that's simply, absolutely, completely not true? What do you think about that? Not true. So why do you think he would say that, Mike?
I don't know. I mean, maybe listen, this is the kind of thing that leads to speculation when you don't have all the information. Now, Bill Hunker came up there and asked who wrote this, and because he wants to know the principles involved, because it makes a difference. Now, if Keith Eck has got an oar in the water here, and he's trying to make it seem like, hey, don't worry about it, everybody involved here is participating in the process, when perhaps it's not true. maybe he's got some sort of an agenda. So it's legitimate to want to know all these things. Or maybe he doesn't have anything going on with it, and he's just his normal Keith Heck self and doesn't really know what's going on. There's a million different possibilities here, but we do know, because we spoke to the horse today, that the horse is not participating in this process, and it has not collaborated on this stuff up to now.
And they said it all along, consistently all along. This is something the commissioners lack. Consistently, they've said from the beginning, we're not being included, we're not being included, we're not being included. This guy says, oh, hey, they're being included. No, we're not. No, we're not. Oh, yes, they are. Yes, they are. I'm going to say it on KJO. Keith, just the fact that you say it, I mean, this does not contribute to the perception that they're telling us the truth about anything.
Well, if you're going to collaborate on something, here's how I envision that happening. Somebody sends me a draft of something, and I look at it and I go, well, I like this in section 1 to section 2. That's all wrong because of such and such or whatever. Well, if that's the case, how is it that somebody, one of the collaborators, is sitting there while Keith Heck reads, well, this says that, you should have a 24-hour manning of the facilities there. And the guy's going, oh, hey, wait a minute. None of that stuff should be catching anybody by surprise if they're truly collaborating on that document, because they will have gone through it at least one time and had something to say about it. And why would something like that, why would you miss something like that?
And the other thing that bothers me is Keith keeps, I think he's writing them down and reading them, making these incendiary analogies like, well, there's a fire going on in Mrs. O'Leary's cow, or whatever it is he's saying. Well, and the people are all wrong, and they're making
massive conflagration, he said.
Yeah, and they're making something out of nothing. You know what, Keith? No, we're not. You're lying for absolutely no reason. What's your possible reason for lying about this? Just say, listen, they were frozen out of it. From now on, we're going to include them.
Well, and if you look at Bill Hunker, a milder mannered person you're probably never going to meet in your life. There's no way that you could watch what he was doing and go, that guy's out of control. There's no way. I mean, he's just very mellow. All he wants to know, I'm coming up here to tell you my concern. And my concern is I would like to know who wrote this document. And, and he goes into his experience with committees and all that kind of stuff. There's nothing. The two people that were freaking out, Simon Hare and Keith Heck, they're the ones who are making a big deal out of this.
Why? Why are they freaking out? Why do they not just tell us?
I think there's probably two things going on. They don't know. That's number one. Number two, they're so, this is Pavlov's dog reaction at this point. Now they're so sick of being criticized that they're very, very defensive. I'm thinking, and you know what? Perhaps you take a different stance with the public instead of seeing certain members of the public. Certainly there's friendly people in there that always get up and tell them how wonderful they are. And they love to see those people get up and talk. But why don't you take a little bit different tack? I know you'd like to think that everybody amongst a certain group of people are always wrong. And they're always going to try to stab you in the back or something like that. I think Bill's question, perfectly legitimate, and it should have been treated with respect, and it wasn't.
And as I mentioned earlier, when even the city council members, individual members, not a resolution, but even when they say, boy, those commissioners sure have a poor reputation, the commissioners have to know this. And so anything that they do to add to that perception, they're just killing themselves. You just can't help this kind of person. There is a way to help them, and that's to ease them off to a retirement and not elect this kind of person at the first opportunity.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to get to the part of the show where a caller called up and asked if they were going to run for re-election. They declined to answer. Both Keith and Cheryl both declined. They said that they're not ready to answer that question yet. I think the caller was not the only one wondering that.
Let's play the next part, because there's more to life than just these things.
Mm-hmm.
To date, we have a meeting with one of the fire companies tomorrow, I think it is, to try to answer some specific questions that they might have. But it's not like this is some kind of a around the door kind of an effort. Everybody is involved in it. Everybody has an opportunity to see them, to make comments on it. We're just trying to arrive at some baseline to where we can have everybody knows what the standards are, because these are the minimum accepted standards if you want to be a firefighting business in Josephine County, that the citizens of the county can take a deep breath and know they all have operating equipment. They all have medical training. They all have certified firefighters. They all have, and we can have a trust that whoever it is, we can take a deep breath and say,
about
okay.
Trust.
And then the money becomes a secondary issue. We have nothing to do with the fees that are set. The companies are the ones who set the fees. If they want to charge $5,000 a month, that's their choice. If they want to charge $50 a month, that's their choice. But everybody who signs up will know they have all agreed to these minimum standards. They can increase the requirements of the standards, but there are minimum standards so that every citizen in Josephine County will know, okay, thank you. And why are we paying the extra money? Well, because we have silver-coated trucks and they don't. Okay, that's fine. That's their choice to make. But there's no efforts to put anybody out of business, and it's just a sad consequence of some of these stories.
Oh, all right. Let's, Commissioner Walker.
Yes, there's a couple.
Okay, before she gets going on this, I just wanted to say, listen very carefully to what she's saying here, because it's cloudy about franchises and what it means. And I would like some clarification on whether or not they're thinking of drawing lines in the county and say, that's your side, this is your side, because that too is anti-competitive, and it's going to mean higher prices for people in those areas, or at least they're captive to the price that the person who owns that area is going to set. And so just listen carefully.
Okay, well, listen slowly.
Of things I'd like to say about that. The people I have talked to or have called or communicated with me, there's some confusion as to what franchise means in the ordinance. And franchise is not an exclusive situation where you franchise one service within an area. A franchise is more something as a definition as to meeting certain standards and saying, yes, you operate and the people can rely on those minimum standards. There can be more than one franchisee. Just like, as an example, coffee stands. You may see a Dutch Brothers on this corner and a Dutch Brothers on another corner, and Dutch Brothers in Jackson County and even Phoenix, Arizona and Washington State. Those are probably a lot of them franchises. They're not all company owned. So there's not an exclusive definition to franchise in this ordinance. It can be anyone can have a franchise within that designated area in the county. The other thing that
you see how it's weird?
In
the beginning, it sounds like there isn't going to be any exclusivity to an area. And then after that, she says, certain franchisee for operating in this particular area. It's weird.
That is weird. I didn't catch that the first time because I thought, well, I don't know, maybe Mike's wrong. She clearly said everybody, different corners, Phoenix, Arizona. And then she says, in that area. Well, I don't know, Mike. I don't know.
And listen, it may be a technicality, who knows, but let's listen more and see if they get more specific.
Ordinance would provide for is that when you have various emergency service providers within an area, whether it's a county, a city, or a region, as we live in here, Southern Oregon region, if someone is fighting a fire, if a company is fighting a fire, or if the state forestry department is fighting a fire and they have to call for additional units to come and assist them, if those people have a mutual aid agreement and they have ascribed to minimum standards, you will know what kind of equipment is coming. If a company doesn't have the kind of equipment you need, you certainly don't want to call them and have a delay and say, well, we don't have that equipment. Where if they're on a mutual aid agreement and they say we have these units or these kinds of equipment, you know that. And when you call them, you're going to get it.
You're going to get it.
Yeah. Let's see you again, Mike. Okay. So here's the thing. As County Fire and Rescue pointed out, they couldn't become part of the mutual aid organization because they were frozen out of the organization, and you had to be a member of the organization to even share that information.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
so wait a minute.
They said it's because of us, just this one show, just this show.
Right.
That they got their chance. This was last Monday that they got their chance. In fact, they said, "Oh, we weren't freezing you out. Well, you're already yeah, right. Okay."
And this will be an interesting thing. If they are going to, and if, franchise, I think they ought to get rid of the word franchise.
Oh,
because
yeah.
the connotations there are, but is it going to be the Rogue Valley Chiefs Association that gets the franchise, or is it the individual companies that get the franchise?
Already do. I mean, they are already existing as if they have the franchise.
Oh, no, that's true.
The head guy being from former rural metro, and the head guy, 80% chance, probably could be 79, Dale, now be careful, that he wrote this thing. And minimum standards, she says, well, they need to have certain kind of equipment. See, the state already knows that, and these guys have already been trying to share with the others. They've already been doing this about what they have and what they don't, and that they're improving. And the state also has ascribed to them a certain level, okay, with 1 being the best and, I don't know, 18 being the worst, whatever. And they're
I think
pretty high. Mike?
Yeah, well, last year, rural metro was rated at a 6. The lower you go, the better it is. And this year they're a 5, but this year county fire is a 6, what rural metro was last year. So, what's the difference between these two situations? Really not much.
And what it's based on, my understanding is, it's based on the kind of equipment that you have, the kind of training that you have, how ready you are to cooperate with others, unless the others won't let you join their reindeer club.
That's right. I wonder how many points you get for that. No.
No, what county fire and rescue says, we don't need any special standards imposed by the county government on us. We've already got standards. We're already meeting those standards. Why is the county involved in this at all? You know the answer already.
Yeah. Yes, of course. No, it's so that they can set a certain standard and award things to their friends and have control, so that only the people that they want, and who knows what sort of quid pro quo is happening for that.
Well, and if you have any doubts,
why don't you just
go ahead? If you have any doubt about that, the commissioners just met in secret session. That's not secret session, it's executive session, whatever. It's a secret to us, okay? They just met in secret session, executive session, to apparently, this is the most we can get out of that, approve the merger of AMR and rural metro. Now, wait a minute. Why is the county involved in that at all?
Yeah. Why? That's a very good question. I'm not really sure, but why also does that have to not be something that the public can see happen?
Right. And the other thing is, okay, these are two private companies that the county has to approve their merger, and it's in executive session to do so. Now, do you feel as if your choices of who you want to have are increased or decreased by that merger? What do you think if you were running county fire and rescue? What would you think? Looks like they're bigger than ever. And he's the only guy sitting at the table. They're the only ones making up the rules. They're telling everybody that we're involved in every step of the way. And it's a lie. And we told him that it's a lie. And he's still repeating it. This guy is still saying that the commissioners had nothing to do with 2 levies ago. Why, you're laughing and you're making... Yes, because we've all seen the tape. You have no credibility. That being the case, I mean, if you say, well, there's nothing to it, and the fact you asked that question is insulting. No, that's not the insulting part, buddy. Go ahead, Mike.
So those are the kinds of things that we're trying to provide for in this ordinance. We're not trying to tell companies how to run their business. We're not trying to tell them what equipment they, should go out and purchase or whatever. But it was just we need to know that they meet the standards with what they do have, and that they can.
We're not trying to tell them how to run their business. We just want to tell them what equipment they have to have.
Right. And why are you telling them this? I mean, they already have the rating. Why are you now coming up? Well, we're not making the ratings. Rural Metro. Oh, I mean the Rogue Valley Fire Chiefs. Come on. This is it's just too obvious.
That's why it's important that we need to know who's writing what.
That's correct. That's why, and that's why their refusal, Simon's refusal, and Keith is sitting right there. He could say so. Him lying about it was a lie. This was an exaggeration. He didn't forget. It was a lie. The fact that he lied about it and then Simon's covering up does not help their credibility. And this hasn't been this way with every board of county commissioners since I've lived here. And some of you have lived here a lot longer. It's not always like this, but this group, that's their default setting. We just got to say goodbye to these guys. That's all. Simon's going to be in longer than the other two, who won't say if they're running or not. But that's okay, because Simon can be handled. Once there's two people who are committed to telling you the truth instead of the opposite, Simon can talk all he wants to, and he may come around, okay? I think that, personally think Wally Hicks is going to blossom in that kind of atmosphere where everybody's trying to do the right thing. Simon won't have any choice because he won't get the opportunity to do things like this. Because we'll tell him. We're telling you now. We'll tell you then, too. Go ahead, Mike.
Provide the service that they're going to say they can provide, and others can rely on it, too, including the state forestry department or BLM, whoever needs to have backup.
Yes, Keith, a question some might ask is, does a fire person, do they have the skills to do basic EMT training? Can they stop a blood flows in a certifiable way, not, cauterizing with a blowtorch or something? Can they do some of these things? Where are the standards for that? And
they're at the state level.
Because not everybody is certified to do EMT work.
And you're going to know
that operating right now.
Right.
Not everybody has firefighters that you would know as a county resident. As they come into your house to assess what the rates are going to be, are these folks background checked? Do we know who they are?
Yes, by the state.
Just trying to come up with some questions that can be answered, and everybody signs on and agrees.
And even so, what are we going to start up a whole new part of county government that goes out and certifies these people and whatever?
You know it. It's full employment for the county again.
Ridiculous.
I mean, this is what we need. We need full employment. They said already that they don't have enough people to enforce GMO. Now they're going to do this kind of thing too. Well, we're going to go out, we're going to check them out, and we know better than the state does. You don't know better than the state does. Why, you can rely on us. We can't rely on you. You've proven that. I mean, when you lie to us, just flat out, just lie. They're involved in every step of the. No, they're not. So why would we believe you could do this? It's just ridiculous, and it's extra. Why are why is there more restrictions here than anywhere else in the state? That doesn't make any sense unless you're trying to pave the way for your pals. What other explanation can there be that we would have more restrictive rules than anywhere else?
Yeah.
And if they're going to add on these extra restrictions, they're not going to do it. Simon Hare's not going to be there, pump. He's not going to do that. He doesn't know how to do that. So they're going to ask, guess who they're going to ask to do it? The combination of AMR and Rural Metro. They're competitors. Who else would evaluate it? If it's got to be local, it doesn't have to be local. There's no reason. Oh, think of the children. There's no reason to bring it locally if it's already done somewhere else, and we can't afford to do all that checking. So they're going to pawn it off on some other company.
Well, their local entity here is the Chiefs Association, which is just made up of people that are in the business in this county, and County Fire aren't any of them, except for now that they've just been accepted into it.
Because of us, yes. That's right.
But they're not in a chair position or anything like that.
No.
They're not calling shots within that organization.
And they don't like them.
Yeah. So here's the bottom line. The Chiefs Association is made up of their competitors, and so I don't think they should be in the business of setting the standards, regulating the standards of these companies here, because it's just there's too much opportunity for inside pool going on there,
and imposing stricter standards because we need what?
Yeah, well, and they already have a bunch of these state and federal certifications. Why we need to add to that just seems like another layer of government that that government that is hanging by its fingernails can't really afford to administrate.
How else are we going to have full employment at the county level if we don't add on another level of bureaucracy?
Right, because that's good for the economy.
We're done for this evening. Okay, I'm kind of tired of this subject, for one, and two, it's not getting us anywhere. We're going to have to wait a whole year before, putting Simon over here and saying, you can say everything you want, you can protest, you can make suggestions, about a lot of things, but we're not going to tolerate this kind of, well, you're asking, but we're not going to tell you. That's going to stop. Okay. The only way it can stop is you've got two choices. Two of them out of three. Cool. But you're going to have to make the right choices. And it better be people who are saying, question this kind of behavior. Simon is dead wrong about this one. Bill Hunker asked him the question. He should have just flat out answered. They need the positive publicity. But apparently, covering up this is more important than even appearing to be fair. I just don't think that we can help them, Mike. I just don't think that we can do anything for them.